In the early hours of June 13th, Israeli jets were bombing Tehran. Nuclear sites and military bases were being blown up. Top military generals were being assassinated. Mossad agents operated inside Iran to great success. The Ayatollah Khomeini fled to a bunker with his family, fearing for his life. It seemed that the regime was close to its end, and the path to a new Iran, one free and democratic, was here. Then it all stopped. The bombs stopped dropping over Tehran and Tel Aviv. A ceasefire brokered by the US and Qatar stopped 12 days of war. Khomeini and his regime were counting their last days, and now they have that most crucial factor, time. Time to rebuild and regain what they have lost. In this video, we'll look at what went wrong. And if you like geopolitical breakdowns like these, subscribe to my channel. Your support would allow me to continue to make these types of videos. One of the biggest impediments to regime change was Trump himself. Donald Trump did not want regime change in Iran. He didn't want the war to escalate with further US involvement. It would have been an end to his presidency and his MAGA movement. His entire foreign policy is based around transactions, big shiny deals. The people partially elected him on a peace platform. To prolong this war would renege on that promise of no new wars. To get the US further involved would fracture and split his base, and ruin the rest of his presidency. It is simply an event which he can't face. This perhaps was one of the biggest explanations for the failure of regime change. A ground invasion by American and Israeli troops is bad optics, and Trump is all about optics. With the harsh terrain of Iran and the large population size, a total war would be a disaster. A more favorable alternative to overthrow Iran's government would be by covert means, by working with the dissenting factions inside the government. The pro-Western people on the inside, working in conjunction with the Iranian people. This perhaps is the most viable path to regime change, and it might already be happening, we just don't know it. The biggest problem the Israeli military faced, though, was history. The very words regime change open historical wounds inside Iranian society. Iran has faced foreign intervention in the past. One needs only to go back to World War II, when Iran, a neutral country, faced Allied invasion and then occupation. This led to the forced abdication of Shah Reza Pahlavi. Then in 1953, Iran's Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh was ousted in a coup, orchestrated covertly by the US and UK. The coup brought back the Shah's son, who was perceived as dependent on the West. The war with Iraq in the 80s also led to anti-Western sentiment, as most of the world supported the aggressor, Iraq. Further still, seeing the chaos in Libya, Syria, and Iraq in the last 2 decades, a mindset developed within Iran that it is better to tolerate a subpar government than invite chaos and instability, even if it means overthrowing a repressive government. Iranians saw what was going on around them in their neighboring countries and settled on internal reforms. The public thus favored the status quo over foreign intervention. The moment Israeli jets took off for Tehran, the hope of regime change was doomed. Any message by Netanyahu for the Iranian people to rise up was pointless. For those in Washington and Jerusalem wishing to see regime change in Iran, they must remember that today's Iranians are deeply bound to their collective memory of foreign intervention and betrayal. Failing to recognize this psychological and historical element has backfired and led to the opposite of regime change, unity and acceptance of a not-so-perfect regime. Operation Rising Lion, codenamed for the pre-Islamic Revolution in Iran, didn't meet its goal of regime change, but where the military operation failed, a more covert and internal war could prove successful. A good chunk of Iranians are disillusioned with the regime and want change. Another reason why regime change failed is because of the lack of internal support for people to rise up. Unless large factions of the government itself, particularly the military, police, and intelligence, begin to defect, overthrowing the regime will be a hard thing for the people to undertake alone. There had to be some sort of guarantee that Iranians taking to the streets would also be helped by those oppositional factions inside the government. The Crown Prince of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, a king in exile, has been trying to get his people to overthrow the Islamic Republic. To get the people of Iran to do this, he gave speeches urging his fellow countrymen to rise up and take to the streets. But the Shah lacks the internal support structure to coordinate an uprising. He can't get his media out to people in Iran due to strong censorship and suppression inside the country. This is a huge reason for the failure of regime change. To remedy these deficiencies, Reza Pahlavi has opened up a platform by which defectors inside the Islamic Republic's government and military can defect. This would be a huge step in bringing about the change so many want, as it would give a powerful ally to the people of Iran. One event, though, which possibly could have triggered an open revolution, and those factions to rise up against the regime was the assassination of the supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Israel said it wanted to take out Khamenei. The Israel defense minister said that they were actively targeting him. But according to Reuters, President Trump stopped an Israeli plan to assassinate Khamenei. One of the sources said, "Have the Iranians killed an American yet? No. Until they do, we're not even talking about going after the political leadership." The Israelis had a window to take out Khamenei, but Trump convinced them not to. President Trump saved the Iranian regime. If Khamenei died, the reality of regime change would be much more likely. Trump would go on to say he saved the supreme leader from an ugly and ignominious death. But it is important to note that Israel's defense minister refuted this reporting from Reuters, saying that they didn't need the green light from Washington. He said Israel wanted to eliminate him, but there was no operational opportunity. Whoever you believe, taking out Khamenei would have been a massive blow to the regime. It ultimately came down to Donald Trump's insistence on keeping the Iranian regime alive, that a deal could be made. But more importantly, it was about Donald Trump's survival, the survival of his presidency. Regime change in Iran will remain a goal for the establishment in the US, but destroying Iran's nuclear program was the principal reason why the war happened. And according to the chief of the IAEA, Iran's nuclear program has been only set back a few months. There are now calls within Iran to continue enriching uranium. Iran's foreign minister said that after 12 days of imposed war, we will not easily back off from enrichment. And why would they? The government in Iran came closer than ever to its collapse. Unprecedented access has been given to the IAEA. Massive sanctions have been forced on the economy. A nuclear deal was breached, and what they got in the end was war. Would they not be fools to not build a nuclear bomb now? Look at what happens to all those countries that don't build one and run into the wrath of the United States. The survival of Iran simply now depends on it. With a temporary pause, they will have time to rebuild and get help from Russia and China. But for regime change, the Israelis have learned how difficult it is to overthrow the Iranian regime. Their next move will largely depend on how much support they can get from the US, whether factions inside the regime will break with the Ayatollah, and whether the Iranians will once again take to the streets. What are your thoughts about the war between Israel and Iran? Is the war truly over? Will Israel and the US try again for regime change? I want to know what you think in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. And thanks for watching.